Distinguished judges, ladies and gentlemen, it's really my great pleasure to come back here and share with you my teaching plan of the text entitled Don't Fear Artificial Intelligence. So today my presentation will fall into 3 parts: who, what, and how. So first one, who am I going to teach? So my students are mostly sophomores or freshmen of non-English majors. And I think this text is a little bit difficult for them. So I think it might be more suitable for sophomores. And most of them are post-90s, so I don't think they have, they are very curious about new things, but I don't think they may have a lot of enthusiasm toward learning English sometimes. So this is a problem we English teachers should always deal with. So I will elaborate on that later. So the second one is what I'm going to teach them. Here come my teaching objectives. So firstly, I would like to, after the learning of this text, I expect them to understand why we shouldn't fear artificial intelligence and what strategies we can do to deal with that. And secondly, I expect them to learn some important words and sentences. And thirdly, to appreciate the writing skills. And finally, to do critical thinking. So here comes my last, but the most important part of my presentation. So this is about how I'm going to teach them. So majorly, I may have 6 procedures. The first one is to give them a lead-in. Just as I have mentioned before, they may sometimes, without the teacher's guidance, they may not have such a passion for learning. So in this piece of writing, I think it's very effective if I could show them some video clip to show how robots control human beings. We can actually find tons of movies about that. But it shouldn't be long because this is not my focus, because next I will introduce to them about the 3 laws of robotics, which is mentioned in paragraph 6, and ask the students to think whether robots would go to control human beings or control the world, and maybe I will have a little interview. So my second procedure would be read for the theme. So first, I'd like to analyze the text very briefly. This is an, of course, argumentation, and I think the theme of the text actually could be divided into 2 parts. So the first part is from paragraph 2 to 4. The author tells us about why we shouldn't fear artificial intelligence, because paragraph 2 tells us the reason is that technology is always the double-edged sword, and it wouldn't be the first one. So artificial intelligence, we shouldn't fear that. And then number 2, in paragraph 3, the author mentions that actually artificial AI is not only controlled by individuals, and the whole group's intelligence have already been improved. So we shouldn't fear those individuals. And paragraph 4, explain the reason about actually the violence rate nowadays is declining. That is quite a surprise to people. But because people can get more information nowadays, that's why people think maybe violence is rising. So this is the reason. These 3 paragraphs introduce the reason why we shouldn't fear. And from paragraph 5 to the last paragraph, he talks about the strategy. I think paragraph 5 talks about people have done that to set the guidelines. And paragraph 6 tells us these guidelines, we still have time to set it. And paragraph 7 tells us about what efforts we have already done. And paragraph 8 tells us we should do something to our human governance and the social institutions and set the social ideals. So this is generally the theme of the text, not the theme, the main structure actually. So next, in order to help the student to get to know the theme, I would especially before reading, offer them some help by drawing their attention to the markers of several paragraphs. For example, in paragraph 5, the first sentence, the third word, strategies. So I would draw students' attention to this, because if the keyword here mentioned, of course, from the following paragraphs, he is going to talk about strategies. And also in paragraph 3 and 4, the third line and the second line, we have a but, which means something might we originally expect. Now it's actually not the case. So these kind of markers could be very effective. And sometimes to motivate the students, I may ask them to preview the text and then in class give them a quiz by providing them some comprehension questions and to think about. So my third procedure would be reading between the lines. So I think first, at the lexical level, these texts have a few words that students may have some difficulties to understand. For example, paragraph 2, the third line, comparable specters. Specters means ghost, but here there is a metaphor used here. But if the students have some difficulties in understanding that, I think they can guess the meaning from the following, like the possibility, blah, 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 and then may guess the meaning. I would draw their attention to this. And in paragraph 3, the word in the first line, dystopian, I think that's a culture-loaded word, and especially it is associated with utopia. So this kind of information, we shouldn't just limit the learning to the word itself, but also provide some cultural background to that. And also in paragraph 4, we have this word, the second line, exponential. And also the last but the second line, exponentially. So these two words come together, and we can draw their attention that because one is adjective, the other is adverb, so they can learn these two words together. So this is for word level. Then how about the syntactic level then? I think there are also a few complicated sentences that deserve their attention. For example, in paragraph 2, the last sentence, the author uses an analogy to compare technology to fire and to stress its double-edged, this influence to people. And also in paragraph 3, the fourth line, compare a kid with the president of the United States. This is a contrast used here, and to vividly show us about how the time has changed. And also in paragraph 4, the last sentence, I think that's also one of the most important sentence or difficult sentence for the students to understand. And of course, it comes from some difficulties. For example, their understanding of the phrase of result from, and also about the dash, punctuation, etc. So, and also in paragraph 8, I think, the last sentence, they also mentioned, I am more optimistic and blah, blah, blah. So here, I would like them to think about this word. Optimistic here actually means what? And in paragraph 9, the last but the second sentence, we have a moral imperative to realize this promise while controlling the peril. I think first, this sentence, when we are reading it, it's very, beautifully formed because we have alliteration here, promise and peril. And the second, they may have difficulty with understanding the word imperative, so maybe I will try to give them some help. So by sentence part, I would like them to do exercises like paraphrasing or translation, etc. So the fourth procedure of my teaching plans is to practice after they have learned so many words, sentences, and skills, and they may try to have some kind of exercises like blank filling. Sometimes I will give them some keywords and followed by some sentences with blanks and ask them to choose some of the keywords to fill in the blanks with the proper forms. And I think this text is very good for a material for writing a summary, because I can first ask students to get the major points of the text, for example, why we shouldn't fear and what strategies we should have. And the fifth part is critical thinking. So I think the students, after learning this text, they can think about two things. One is whether when we are trying to find the solutions to some problems, whether it's workable, we can think about the time, whether some people have done it before, or whether we have what we have done. And the second, I want them to think about, because in paragraph 5, the author mentions about biotechnology, but they can think about whether it is reasonable that we compare AI with biotechnology, whether its example actually could apply to our our strategies to deal with AI, whether the two have any differences and whether they two have certain kind of similarities. Okay, so my last part would be assignment. Maybe I will ask them to have a debate.
I'm sorry to stop you. Now
okay,
time is up.
thank you.
Here comes the questions for you.
Well, you said you have 6 steps, but you have talked about just 5.
Assignment.
So what is your last step, assignment?
Thank you very much for giving me the time. So my last procedure is assignment. And assignment, I want them to prepare for a debate. And maybe on the possible topics could be whether AI could really pose any dangers to us, or whether the strategies the author has already discussed about are workable or not. So such kind of a preparation may, on one hand, can give them some chances to practice their English and practice the words and the sentences they have learned from the text. And on the other hand, they can also try to do some research by themselves and try to practice their critical thinking.
Don't think I'm so kind as to let you say that. My question comes from that.
Yes.
That is, how can you be sure that your students can debate successfully? Because I don't think their input is enough to produce such kind of a debate.
Yes, so I admit that it's a little bit challenging for sophomores.
Maybe too challenging.
Yes, yes, it's more workable maybe for English majors, but I would like to make it simpler by providing some guidelines for them. For example, at first, before I give them this assignment, I would give them the key points here, because if I'm going to ask them to discuss about whether the strategies are workable, first I would ask them to locate what are the strategies, and the second then ask them to think about whether it could be applied to the reality. And then also ask them to think about what kind of words and sentences or structures they could use in their real using. And then I would just strictly stipulate that they should use these structures in their debating. So it's more kind of a form, maybe when we are talking about this debate, it's in terms of a form, but maybe sometimes it might not have so much to do maybe with critical thinking.
But why debating? Why not writing? For
Writing,
writing, they have more time to think, to polish their language, right?
Yeah, sure.
But in debating, they have to sit impromptu. So that is very difficult for them. So why do you think debating is necessary or is chosen?
Yes, I wouldn't say it's necessary. I think it's a possible assignment, because in my fourth part, I have...
Possible, and also it should be suitable.
Yeah, sure. But in my fourth procedure, I have already assigned them to write summary. So it's already output by writing. So
why can't you go further? Writing the summary, then writing something
more. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
based on that.
Yes, thank you for your advice.
Okay. Now let's turn to paragraph 8.
Yeah.
Beginning with ultimately. Would you please read this sentence, the very first sentence?
Okay. Ultimately, the most important approach we can take to keep AI safe is to work on our human governance and the social institutions.
Can you tell me what is human governance and social institutions?
Human governance you mean English or Chinese?
Either.
OK， 是指人类对于智能，就是人工智能的一个管理以及社会的一些制度。
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.